Greetings and salutations to the esteemed panel, supervisor and everyone who is watching. We are final year students in the Bachelor of Science Honours Statistics, and the title of our project is Parents' Preferences and Smartphone Buying Decision for Children. We were supervised by our beloved lecturer, Puan Nurul Aini binti Abdul Wahab, and welcome to our final year project presentation. Before that, let's meet the team.
First, I will introduce about Chapter 1. According to technological statistics, about 62% of the world's population owns a mobile phone. Nowadays, smartphones have become important in people's life. Smartphones allow users to download and install advanced programs based on phone platforms. As for parents, some parents share their phones with their children, but as the kids grow older, they eventually bought a new phones for their children. That's why parents have to consider a smartphone price, function, brand, quality, and other factors. Since the pandemic era started in early 2020, children need smartphones since their primary school. This is because smartphones help them to complete their assignments on time and help them to download or viewing education materials. That's why smartphones are critical for children nowadays to access the internet and submit their assignment on time. According to a survey done by Malaysian Communication and Multimedia Commissions, they have found that majority of the smartphones users comes from people ages between 25 until 34, have high school diploma, work full-time, and have income more than 5,000 ringgit Malaysia. However, we also know that smartphones have their disadvantages towards children. According to a research done by Journal of the Korea Academia Industrial Cooperation Society, they have found that smartphones give some dangers to children such as smartphone addiction, mobile gaming, and sleep deprivation. Next is the problem statement. Parents who work from home, they desperately need smartphones to help facilitate their affairs. Same goes to children who need smartphones to help them implementing distance learning from home. Parents have their own choice and way to buy a smartphone for the needs of their children. Hence, the key in this project is to investigate the factors affecting a parent's buying decision towards choosing a smartphone. Next is our research objective. The first objective is to assess the association of types of status, living area, ethnicity, age, brand of smartphones, feature of smartphones, price of smartphones, type of children activities, and influence from surrounding towards parents' buying decision of smartphones. Next is our second objective, which is to identify the most important factors from a pool of 9 factors. Next is the third objective for the study is to identify the classification rule of buying decisions among parents.
The next chapter will be discussed on the literature review of this study. The first literature review is the chip decision tree. Milanovic, Stimankovic et al. In 2016 conducted a study on 417 people using the chip algorithm to identify the dominant leadership style. Next is the type of children activities. A study was found in 2017 where educational applications were a popular choice for students as they have a higher percentage compared to students using smartphones for social media. The next literature review is the price of smartphone. The first finding by SATA in 2013, when evaluating customer behavior, the price of a product is an important element which should not be neglected since price could have an effect. However, a second finding by Shabrin et al. In 2017, a survey found no statistically significant connections among price and new-gen smartphone purchase behavior. What about the features of the smartphone? A study conducted in 2014 deals with an advanced multi-sensor approach for the implementation of a tracking system exploiting sensing and processing features embedded in smartphone devices. Next is the influence from surrounding. According to the report from Chow, Chen, Yeo and Wong, when it comes to choosing the finest smartphone for their children, parents are not immune to being persuaded by media, relatives and friends. This is because, according to Suki 2013, consumers are more likely to purchase a smartphone based on the suggestions of a social group, particularly if the members are experts.
Next, we continue with the chapter 3, which is methodology. For research design, the researchers applied the cross-sectional research design. A cross-sectional study is a type of observational research that represents the data from variables collected across a population sample at one point in time. Cross-sectional studies are less expensive and require less time than other types of research. For the study, it could offer valuable information into the characteristics of a population and identify correlation for variables related to the study. Next, for the research population and sample. The population used in the study is all parents in Malaysia, regardless of status and ethnic. Meanwhile, the sample for the study is targeting Malaysian parents that have children aged below 17 years old. As the inclusive criteria, the researchers are targeting 250 parents who come from the parents of students in UiTM Seremban campus that have children aged below 17 years old. Next, we move to the sampling method. In this study, the researchers use a non-probability sampling method in which the sample chosen represents the captive audience. A captive audience is a quick and easy way to generate a sample. For data collection method, in this study, researchers were using primary sources of data. A total of 300 questionnaires were evenly distributed using Google Form, as the medium and the link has been distributed through online applications such as WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram. The researchers reached the parents with the link survey provided through their children, which is the students in UiTM Seremban campus. Surveys were administered from October 19 to November 22 in 2021. After excluding questionnaires that were either incomplete or had multiple missing data, a total of 250 questionnaires from the survey were used for further data analysis. For research instrument, a survey using questionnaires will perform as one of the research approaches, since it is safer to collect the data through online platform to avoid infection from COVID-19 pandemic. The primary goal of the research methodology was to uncover the elements that influence parents' buying decisions when choosing smartphone for their children. A 3-page questionnaire with 3 sections was used in the study, which is Section A is for demographic profile, Section B is for factors involved in determining parents' preferences on smartphone buying decision, and Section C is for parents' buying decision in selecting smartphone for children. After that, multiple choice questions were employed in the survey. This theoretical framework shows about the factors related to the buying decision of smartphone. This study has 5 independent variables, which are types of children's activities, the price of smartphone, the features of smartphone, brand preference of smartphone, and influence from surrounding. Next is the data analysis. The method of analysis in the study includes chi-square test, decision tree analysis using chi-square automatic infection detection, which is CHIAD, classification rule, and classification matrix to achieve the research objective. For objective 1, the method of analysis used is chi-square test. For the research objective 2, the method of analysis used is decision tree analysis, which is CHIAD method, and for the research objective 3, the method of analysis used are classification rule and classification matrix. We move to the objective 1 for assessing correlations between categorical data. When requesting a cross-tabulation in SPSS, the chi-square statistic shows as an option. Chi-square test is the output and Pearson chi-square is the chi-square statistic used in the test of independence. However, if the percentage below the table of chi-square test is greater than 20%, then the assumption has been violated. Hence, the value of likelihood ratio should be considered instead of the value of Pearson chi-square. Additionally, chi-square test is also used to determine the strength of the association between 2 variables if the result is significant using the symmetric measure table. The value of phi is used to measure the strength of the association between 2 variables, each of which has only 2 categories. Otherwise, phi must be used to measure the strength of the association between one nominal variable with either another nominal variable or with an ordinal variable. Next, we move to the objective 2. In this study, the response variable is parents' buying decision of smartphone for children. A decision tree is built using the chi-square automatic interaction detector method to offer an understanding of the interrelationship between parents' buying decision of smartphone for children and numerous factors. The child decision tree, as its name implies, is based on the chi-square test, which is used to choose the optimal split at each phase. The variable buying decision was assigned the function of the dependent variable in order to design a decision tree. A classification rule is a statement that distinguishes one class notions from those of other classes. Researchers tackle these issues in the study, which are common in classification methods. The output that showed in SPSS would be written using the if-then rule statement. An if-then rule is an expression of the form of if condition, then conclusion. And for classification metric, it is a standard tool for evaluation of statistical models and is sometimes referred to as a confusion matrix. When selecting the classification matrix option, a graphic is generated that compares actual and forecasted values for each predicted state that have been defined. The model's predicted values are represented by the rows in the matrix, while the actual are represented by the columns. The above shows the example of the classification matrix.
Next, we will present about Chapter 4. First is the demographic characteristic of respondents. As we can see in the table, the majority of the respondents, which is about 44.8%, comes from people between 45 until 54. And the minority of the respondent, which is about 10.4%, comes from people ages between 25 until 34. Next is the parental status. As we can see in the table, it is half and half between father and mother, which is about 50% of each of them. Next is the living area. As we can see, the respondent mostly comes from urban area, which is about 57.6% of them. Meanwhile, the remaining comes from rural area. Next is the ethnic. Majority of the respondent, which is about 95.6%, are Malay, 3.2% are Chinese, and 1.2% are Indian. Next is the parents' buying decision, which is our dependent variable. As we can see, about 73.2% of the respondents agree to buy smartphone for their children, and 36.8% disagree to buy smartphone for their children. Next is the results and analysis for our first objective, which is to find the association between variables. We have used chi-square test analysis to achieve the objective. From these two tables, we have found that there are 5 variables that are statistically significant since the p-value is smaller than alpha equals to 0.05. We also have found that there are 5 variables that have significant association with the parents' buying decision. These variables are age, price of the smartphone, features of the smartphone, type of children activities, and brand of smartphones. Next is to find the strength of the association. We have used the Phi and Kramer's value. According to this table, we have found that variable age, price of smartphone, features of smartphone, and children activities have a very strong association with the parents' buying decision. However, we have found that the variable brand of smartphone has only strong association with the dependent variable because the Phi value is 0.135. Meanwhile, the other variables such as status, living area, ethnic, and influence from surrounding have no association with the parents' buying decision.
Next, I will continue to the result and analysis for decision tree. Statistically speaking, these questionnaire items are variables in the process of modeling the decision tree. It contains variables which were selected from the form base and shows the structure of an analysis sample of 250 respondents. Next, this is the result of our decision tree model. This figure indicates that the created model contains within 3 levels of the tree depth a total of 7 nodes, of which 4 are terminal. In addition, from a total of 9 initially specified independent variables, the final model includes 3, which are price, children's activities, and brand. The remaining 6 variables were eliminated from the decision tree since they are not statistically significant from the point of association with the parents' buying decision of smartphone. In this way, a significant reduction of the model's dimensionality is achieved. As can be seen in the model, the most significant independent variable is the price of smartphone with p-value equal to 0.000, which means that it is most strongly associated with the dependent variable. As the first discriminator, it splits the root node, which is the sample of 250 respondents, into 2 groups containing different categories presented as Node 1 and Node 2. Node 1 indicates the group of respondents that prefer the price of the smartphone less than 1,200, while the price more than 1,200 ringgit belongs to Node 2. From Node 1, 56.8% of the respondents that prefer the price of smartphone less than 1,200 ringgit agree to buy smartphone for their children. Meanwhile, 43.2% of them do not prefer to buy one even though the price is below 1,200 ringgit. Within the second level of the tree, there is one statistically significant variable identified, which is children activities with p-value equal to 0.000. The group of Node 3 dominated by parents who do not agree to buy the smartphones for their children. Meanwhile, the group of Node 4 dominated by parents who agree to buy the smartphone with 76.2% of respondents. Within the final level of the tree, variable brand is identified as statistically significant for splitting of Node 4 with p-value 0.032. In this way, Node 5 and Node 6 are formed. Both groups are dominated by parents' decision who agree to buy smartphone for their children with 87.5% and 64.5% respectively. In fact, the path from the root to the terminal nodes generate a set of rules for classification of parents' buying decision. This indicates that the developed model in the decision tree can be formulated as if-then rules, hence the third goal of the research will be fulfilled. These derived rules will be interpreted as follows. For note 1, if the price of smartphone is lower than 1,200 ringgit, then the study can conclude that the majority of parents will agree to buy smartphones for their children with the probability of 0.568. For note 2, if the price of smartphone is higher than 1,200, then the study can conclude that the majority of parents will also agree to buy smartphones for their children with the probability of 0.915. For note 3, if the price of smartphone is lower than 1,200 and the children's activities are either playing games, taking pictures or social media purpose, then the study can observe with 0.609 probability that the majority of parents disagree to buy smartphone for their children. For note 4, if the price of a smartphone is lower than 1,200 and the children's activities in using smartphones are for academic purpose, then the study can say that the majority of parents with the probability of 0.762 agree to buy smartphone for their children. Next, for the rules of note 5, if the price of smartphone is lower than 1,200 and the children's activities in using smartphones are for academic purpose, also the brand for smartphone is from an unpopular brand, then the study can observe with 0.875 probability that the majority of parents are agree to buy smartphone for their children. Last but not least, for note 6, if the price of smartphone is lower than 1,200 and the children's activities in using smartphone are for academic purpose, also the brand for smartphone is from a popular brand, then the study can conclude that majority of parents with the probability of 0.645 are also agree to buy smartphone for their children.
Next is the accuracy assessment of the classification model. Both of these tables provide the basic information on the accuracy and predictive potential of the created child model. Prediction rate is shown as a proportion of inaccurately categorized data. To be more specific, this finding suggests that if the parents' decision to buy smartphones for their children is known in terms of three independent variables, which are price of the smartphone, children's activities, and brand preference of smartphone, there is a 20.8% chances that the parents will be inaccurately classified in terms of preferences to buy smartphones for children, as well as a 21.2% chances when a test sample is used in a model cross-validation. Actual and predicted classification are shown in the second table as a classification metric. In view of the aforementioned, the model's total accuracy is estimated to be 79.2%. To put it another way, the model correctly categorized 198, which are the total value of primary diagonal of the metric out of 250 parents in the sample. Significant changes in classification accuracy can be noticed when the categories of the dependent variable are examined. The percentage structure of model predicted values according to dependent variables categories is not significantly different from the original data, and it correctly represents the major relationships between them. According to the table, the calculated sensitivity is 85.2%, which means that of all the respondents that agree, about 85.2% of them correctly classified by the test. Plus, the specificity is 62.7%, which explains that of all the respondents that disagree, about 62.7% of them is correctly classified by the test. The final part of this chapter is a discussion on findings. The researchers of this study used an online questionnaire to do a survey about parents buying decision of smartphone for their children and used a decision tree model to find the significant factor on their buying decision. Hence, based on the findings of this research, it's found that the main factor which affects parents' buying decision is price of smartphone. According to the result of research study in 2017 that written by Liang, it was also found that for parents, the main factor that may affect parents buying mobile phone for children is the price of mobile phone, because most parents still think that price has to be reasonable. Moreover, this research also found that the secondary factor that affects parents' buying decision is type of activities of their children.
As a conclusion, smartphones companies need to strengthen their productions of their smartphone. This is because children nowadays are studying through online distance learning, which absolutely needs smartphones. Moreover, since the pandemic era started, there have been an increasing pattern in demand for advanced communication tools such as smartphones and tablets. Next is the overall findings for this project. The first finding is that 56.8% parents agree that they prefer to buy smartphone if the price is less than 1,200. Next, the second findings for this project is 64.5% of parents are willing to buy smartphone if the brand is popular. Next, the third findings, which is the last one, it was found that price of smartphone, types of children activities, and brand preference of smartphone have an impact on parents' buying decision. Next, for the recommendations part. Xiaomi is an example of a smartphone manufacturer that have all factors such as affordable price that attract smartphone users. Hence, it is recommended to other smartphone companies to improvise their marketing strategy and granting wage increase to their workers to increase motivations. Last but not least, it is recommended to future researchers to use other factors such as functions of smartphones to get a new interesting findings. And that's all from us. Thank you.